The illustrious subcontinent of South Asia is an iridescent bouquet of a myriad of fragrant flowers. Its contributions to world history include world religions such as Buddhism and Hinduism, titanic contributions to mathematics and the arts, and more languages than there are types of jewels. India is a proud and mighty civilization, often counted among the most ancient of the ancient world, alongside Greece, Iran, China, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. This antiquity is a point of pride for South Asians. That said, it's not entirely clear how far back the roots of Indian civilization reach. After all, the subcontinent was rarely unified under a single empire or kingdom, and many cultural and demographic shifts have occurred over time. At the same time, many ancient texts and practices which emerged thousands of years ago are still used in South Asia today, speaking to a continuity of culture and custom which extends back over millennia. The question thus emerges, how old is Indian civilization? Is it even one culture, or an umbrella of civilizations? And how did the most recognizable aspects of Indian culture emerge? Welcome to our video on the antiquity of Indian civilization and its Mahabharata-scaled journey through world history.
This video is sponsored by you. Unfortunately, the YouTube environment is not great right now, with the algorithm being friendlier to drama and react channels and YouTube being permissive of AI slop. We don't do drama and we don't do AI, but thanks to our members and patrons, our channel continues to make 3 public videos per week, with the team intact and going strong. In recognition of their generosity and contributions, members and patrons receive 2 additional exclusive videos each week, and access many other perks. Join them to watch more than 250 exclusive videos covering every era of history by pressing the join button under the video or the links in the description and pinned comment.
One of the most common claims of India's ancient heritage is the antiquity of the languages spoken there today. Given that South Asia is a multilingual subcontinent, this suggestion requires some unpacking. 3 major language families are spoken by the majority of the population of modern South Asia: the Indo-Aryan languages in the north, the Dravidian languages in the south, and the Tibeto-Burman languages in the far east. The question of when and from where these languages arrived in India is still a matter of academic debate. In general, scholars believe that the Tibeto-Burman and Dravidian languages have been present in South Asia since at least the Bronze Age, though no writing linked to either language family exists. Some have suggested that the Indus Valley Civilization's inhabitants probably spoke a Dravidian language. This civilization flourished in northwestern South Asia between 2600 and 1900 BCE, and is among the earliest cultures of the region. A modern clue suggesting that the Indus Valley people may have spoken a Dravidian tongue is the presence of the Brahwi, a Dravidian-speaking people present in modern Pakistan, far from the southern regions where their linguistic brethren live. However, the Indus Valley script has not been deciphered, leaving linguists unable to confirm which language family it belongs to. Meanwhile, other cultures flourished in southern India at this time, but, like the Indus Valley people, their ethnicity remains uncertain. What is certain is that the Dravidians were well established in India by the time writing appeared in the subcontinent in the late 1st millennium BCE. The Dravidian peoples remain concentrated in the southern tip of India, speaking languages such as Tamil and Kannada, and demonstrating their enduring presence on the subcontinent. The Tibeto-Burmese languages were also likely dispersed across much of South Asia before the appearance of written records in the region, as remnants of their presence appears in the vocabularies of some northern Indian languages. The most numerous spoken language family is the Indo-Aryan family. The general consensus is that this branch of the Indo-European languages appeared in the region in the late Bronze Age, towards the end of the Indus Valley Civilization's lifespan. They then spread throughout the north of the subcontinent, appearing definitively in the written record of history during the 3rd century BCE. However, many linguists argue that the earliest Indo-Aryan sacred texts, the Vedas, trace their roots back to a millennia earlier and were not written down until much later. From their earliest attestation, all three of the major language families of India evolved within the confines of the continent. They did so in constant contact with each other and outside languages. For instance, Urdu and Hindi, the nearly identical official languages of Pakistan and northern India, are both descendants of the ancient Indo-Aryan language Sanskrit. Hindi emerged from northern Indian vernaculars linked to Sanskrit, and Urdu emerged from the military lingo of the mighty Mughal Empire's armies in the 16th to 19th century CE. With the partition of India, the two vernaculars became the official languages of modern India and Pakistan. Both of these languages are old in their presence on the subcontinent, but have changed tremendously over their millennia-long odysseys there. Another aspect of claims to Indian antiquity concerns ethnic demographics. As with language, the diversity of the Indian subcontinent makes it difficult to determine when its various ethnic groups originated. The demographics of India have undergone significant change over time. The origins and arrival of the Dravidian peoples in the subcontinent are unclear. It's almost certain that they were present in South Asia from the time of the Indus Civilization, but scholars still fiercely debate whether they were indeed the inhabitants of the Indus Valley, or if they were only present in the southern parts of the subcontinent, where Dravidian languages are concentrated today. Regarding the Indo-Aryan populations of India, the picture is more complicated. When one looks at linguistic and demographic evidence, the Indo-Aryan peoples arrived in northern South Asia during the 2nd millennium BCE. This has traditionally been interpreted as an invasion that destroyed the Indus Valley Civilization, but modern scholars paint a more gradual picture of slow migration. By the end of the Indus Valley Civilization, in the 1600s BCE, these Indo-Aryan populations had moved from Central Asia and trickled into India, gradually pollinating themselves across northern India. Their spread across South Asia is readily documented by linguists, who examine language isolates and loanwords, tracing migration flows across all provinces of northern India and Pakistan. Of course, these two large groups of people are not the only inhabitants of India. The most curious demographic example is the presence of the Adivasi tribes, an umbrella term describing the indigenous and semi-nomadic tribes of India living in large forested areas. When and how these people arrived in India is unclear. What we do know is that some of the earliest inscriptions in South Asia, the pillars of the Mauryan king Ashoka, mention the Adivasi tribes. Ashoka was the greatest king of the Maurya Empire in the 3rd century BCE, and the man who managed to unite most of the subcontinent. These inscriptions, written on massive pillars or stones all over India and Pakistan, mention forested tribes that dwell in areas under only nominal control of the empire. Thus, the Adivasi's ancestors were present in the subcontinent. Nor was the slow migration of Indo-Aryans the last one in India. In the 2 millennia after their arrival, many different peoples migrated into Hindustan, with the northwest of the subcontinent coming under the control of foreign empires such as the Achaemenids, the Greco-Bactrians, the Kushans, and the Mughals. The Mughals were originally a Turco-Persian dynasty from what is now Uzbekistan, and expanded deep into India proper, coming to rule most of the subcontinent and leaving a demographic legacy on the land. Thus, the major demographic divisions of India appear ancient at first glance, but more complex migratory dynamics have always existed beneath the region's main Dravidian and Indo-Aryan ethnic markers. Another major part of the conversation about the ancient roots of Indian civilization is the subcontinent's religious tapestry. This topic is often rife with controversy, as many Hindu nationalists use the alleged timelessness of their religion as a means to claim a monopoly over the history of the subcontinent. However, all of India's religions have undergone massive changes throughout their history on the subcontinent. For instance, some scholars have suggested that seals from the Indus Valley Civilization depict the Hindu god of destruction, Shiva. This assertion is made because the seals depict a man in an elaborate headdress in a meditative pose, taming animals. However, this is unlikely, as historians have shown through numismatic and literary evidence that Shiva rose out of a mixture of the Central Asian wind god Huesho and local Vedic deities in the first half of the first millennium CE. In fact, the Vedas, dating to the 1500s BCE, show reverence for deities that are not as prominent in modern Hinduism. These deities, such as Indra, Varuna, Agni, and Mitra, are more like the gods of other Indo-European pantheons, such as the Greeks, Celts, and Norse. They were worshipped throughout the first millennium BCE, when the religions of Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikism rose either in opposition to or independently of them. These faiths, known as the Sramanas, became prominent across India, with Buddhism especially prolific in its propagation. It was this Sramanic dominance that led the Vedic specialists known as Brahmins to embark on a journey to reinvent their faith, setting it on the path to becoming something more like modern Hinduism. The Brahmins wrote new texts between the 3rd century BCE and the 3rd century CE, such as the Puranas and the epics Mahabharata and Ramayana. They also became attached to large regional cults of deities that were emerging at the time, such as Vishnu, Shiva, and Krishna. The latter two deities rose in the northwest and central portions of the subcontinent, respectively, and incorporated visual elements of foreign deities, such as the Kushan wind god Huesho and the Greek hero god Heracles. The Brahmins also linked them to deities mentioned in the Vedas, such as the storm god Rudra, who became an avatar of Vishnu, and the war god Kartikeya. This was the beginning of Hinduism as it is known today, though it went through many iterations and transformations since the 3rd century CE. It was at the cusp of the Common Era that Jews and Christians likely first arrived in the subcontinent, with the latter claiming Saint Thomas for their founding saint. Both of these Abrahamic religions would see further waves over the next 2 millennia, such as the Catholics of Goa, who came due to the presence of the Portuguese. The Zoroastrians of India arrived at the end of the first millennium CE, coming from the newly Islamized Iran of their ancestors. Islam spread not long after under the Delhi Sultanate, and became prominent in many parts of the subcontinent, including Bengal. Islam and Hinduism often bled into each other, with many mystic practices becoming common to both faiths. Eventually, this convergence led to the development of the Sikh faith in the 15th century CE. Thus, religions in India are always fluid and in constant dialogue with each other. They were never static, with the Vedic faith of the first millennium BCE being very different from modern Hinduism. Many ancient civilizations claim continuity in their political unity. For instance, China and Egypt often claimed legitimacy due to their supposedly uninterrupted state structures. In both cases, however, state borders were fluid, and dynasties came and went in often rather decisive disruptions. Continent-unifying empires were a rarity throughout the millennia of Indian history. The Indus Valley Civilization dominated the northeast of the subcontinent during the Bronze Age, but did not control lands further south than Gujarat. Before the British colonization of India, only 2 empires came close to uniting the entire subcontinent: the Buddhist Maurya Empire and the Muslim Mughal Empire. The first flourished for about 2 centuries, between the 4th and 2nd centuries BCE, and the latter between the 16th and 19th centuries CE. Between these 2 titans of history, there were other regional empires that influenced the whole subcontinent through cultural means. These included the Gupta Empire of the 3rd to 5th century CE, which promoted new forms of Hinduism through royal patronage, and the Maratha Empire of the 17th to 19th century CE, which fought many wars against the Mughals. In southern India, empires like the Chola and Vijayanagara empires linked the region together during the 9th to 14th and 14th to 17th century CE respectively. Thus, the pattern of regional empires engaging in trans-regional cultural exchange is far more common than that of pan-Indian empires, it can get hard to define a single Indian form of statehood, which can be traced back to the earliest stages of the subcontinent's history. Political unity in South Asia only really occurred during the British Raj, the period from the 17th to the 20th century, when the British East India Company and the British Empire conquered the whole subcontinent. This was one of the few times when all of South Asia came under the rule of one single polity. The Mauryas, Guptas, and Mughals had come close, but never fully succeeded. Thus, it was only in the 19th century when truly pan-Indian political structures emerged. The British colonial period saw the emergence of Indian national movements. Some were centered on Hindu or Muslim identity, others were civic or communist pan-Indian, and still others were developed around strong regional or ethnic identities. These conflicting movements led to the bloody partition of 1947, when India and Pakistan separately declared independence. Pakistan would see Bangladesh split from it in 1971, further fragmenting the continent. While often claiming antiquity to justify themselves, these ethnic, regional, and religious movements are, in fact, 20th century developments. Consequently, they are both recent and indicative of fragmentation in Indian civilization even after the brief enforcement of political unity. While the political unity of Indian civilization is not a common pattern in South Asian history, the cultural unity of the subcontinent is a rather common motif. Given the pluralism of South Asian history, with its myriad regional cultures and religions, and the richness of cultural change that filled the subcontinent, such a claim may seem surprising. However, there are multiple examples of India's cultural diversity converging in unexpected ways. For instance, the religions of South Asia often had various saints or shrines which they worshipped in common. An example of such a figure is Latif, a 17th century saint in the region of Sindh in modern Pakistan. This was a Sufi saint, an umbrella term describing movements of Muslim mystics. Despite being Muslim, he was not afraid to write verses praising local Hindu spiritualists for their devotion. Latif was also a prolific musician, whose poetry was adored by people of all faiths. This form of cross-religious pollination was common in Indian history. Kings across South Asia's history sponsored all sorts of faiths, irrespective of their own affiliation. Mughal kings like King Akbar sponsored Hindu and Sanskrit scholarship. Mauryan kings like Ashoka sponsored Jain, Brahmin, and Ajivika shrines and cells, and many Muslim mystics engaged with the Hindu practice of yoga. Many regional natural spirits are still universally worshipped by locals across South Asia, regardless of religion, underscoring the timelessness of this tradition. Despite its linguistic diversity, the Indian subcontinent has also long been paradoxically united by language. During the first millennium CE, Sanskrit was a cosmopolitan lingua franca across South Asia and beyond. It was a language used by kings and poets, a medium that transmitted major epics like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and a language used in religious debates across many traditions. And yet, Sanskrit did not dislodge local languages as Latin did the languages of the peoples conquered by Rome. On the contrary, it enriched local dialects with new words and provided bilingualism and cross-cultural communication. During the Mughal period, Persian emerged as another language of government and high culture in India, where it engaged with the pre-existing Sanskrit literary culture. Similarly, one of the languages propagated by Buddhists, Pali, also filled this role among many communities in India and Sri Lanka before Sanskrit supplanted it. At least as early as the first millennium BCE, the various regional polities of India do appear to have engaged in cross-cultural networks, either through religion or through continental-wide cultural circles of literature and poetry. It is why, as early as the Indo-Greek and Chinese visitors, the idea of India as a cultural space was somewhat crystallized, including the subcontinent itself. The idea of Bharatavamsa, a term from the 2nd to 3rd century BCE that describes India as a cultural space, appears to have been prevalent among these elite literary circles. The combination of the regional and the cosmopolitan coexisting in an inclusive space known as India is at least 2 millennia old, with antecedents going even further back. As we have seen, India has a truly ancient history, and a conception of its cultural sphere as a diverse yet unified whole. It also has, like its Hellenic, Egyptian, Iranian, Levantine, and Chinese antique companions, been tremendously transformed by demographic, economic, and cultural change. This is perhaps the greatest contradiction of Indian history. Its ethnic groups are many and malleable to the sands of time. Its faiths have been transmuted from one precious stone to another with each new moon. And yet the political changes of the region have always been done on the foundations of previous trans-regional networks. India and its myriad gods and kingdoms are akin to the gardens their kings, sages, and lowly villagers have built for nourishment, pleasure, and theological contemplation. Much like an Akbarnama praising the complex life of the greatest of Mughal kings, Indian civilization is but a massive poem of honeyed words. It changes dramatically from one act to another, but remains illustrious and blossoming. South Asia's garden of history, from the predecessors of the great Indus Valley to the modern states that adorn the subcontinent, ever-changing, and yet built on the same fertile soil where its erstwhile flowers have sown their roots. More videos on Indian culture and history are on the way, so make sure you're subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Every week we release exclusive Patreon and YouTube member content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or the button under the video. To watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.